Night Flowed. So, I'm not sure how to go about this, but I feel like this story needs to be told, if only for my own peace of mind. I'm an intern in a city hospital which serves a notoriously underserved community. The hospital itself is old. It's been standing since the late 1800s. It used to be a tuberculosis sanitarium. I've never really encountered anything supernatural, but I haven't written off the existence of such phenomena. That being said, a shadow in the night isn't enough to make me start thinking of ghosties and ghoulies and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night. So when I started working nights in the hospital, things seemed to be going pretty well. I'd have my admissions and I'd take care of my current patients without issue. Then, one night, I got an admission. I'll call this patient Jerry. Now, Jerry, as it turns out, has a very long history of coming to this hospital to the point where admitting him is almost a rite of passage for any would-be physician that trains at this facility. He has a whole boatload of medical issues: kidney problems, diabetes, high blood pressure. He also has a history of schizophrenia, and on top of that, he has some good old-fashioned dementia. Before meeting Jerry, I was told he's actually a really fun guy. He's always enthusiastic and seemingly happy to be there. So, when I went to see him and found him to be very sullen, I was a little anxious. The admission was done, the orders were placed, and I didn't think more of it. He had been admitted for chest pain, so I knew I would be going back to draw additional blood work later that night. It was around 2 a.m. when I went back to see Jerry. I was hoping that I could just do it real fast before he fully woke up. When I went in there, Jerry wasn't in his bed. Jerry was now sitting in the corner of his room with his sheet, his gown, and his pillows all wrapped around him in some sort of makeshift armor. I quickly walked over to Jerry and saw that he was crying. No, not crying, but rather whimpering, as if he didn't have the stamina to make a full cry. I tried putting on a brave face and said, "Jerry, what's going on?" For an old guy, Jerry was quicker than I thought, and stronger than I would have believed. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward him. "They don't leave me alone. They won't let me sleep. They won't let me eat." He continued on this line of things that the phantom, they, wouldn't let him do. Horrified, I assumed it was the staff taking care of him at his nursing home. But as upsetting as it was to see Jerry like this, I still needed the blood, and this wasn't the first time I'd dealt with confused older patients. I helped Jerry back into his bed, then explained to him how I needed to draw the blood to make sure he was okay. Strangely enough, or maybe not so strangely enough, this made Jerry feel better. Maybe it was something he knew from his long history of being a patient. It was something familiar. I tied the tourniquet in place, then cleaned his arm, found my vein, and went for it. I am not the greatest phlebotomist, so it's always a relief and a bit of an ego boost when I see the blood traveling through the tubing. I was filling up my vial, and it was about halfway full when Jerry started screaming. "Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" He began to jerk violently. Somehow the needle stayed in place, but then, to my disbelief, the blood in the vial started backing up the tube as if some force in Jerry's body were pulling it back. I was so shocked I tried to pull the needle right out of his arm, but the needle wouldn't budge. In shock, I pulled harder. My efforts still could not budge the needle. In response, I quickly pulled the vial of blood out from the opposite end of the tubing. The vial, which had been collecting blood, had gone from being 3/4 full to maybe about just 1/4. After I pulled the bottle out from the other end of the tubing, the needle dropped from Jerry's arm, leaving in its wake what I could already tell would be one nasty bruise. Again, owing to his deceptive quickness and strength, Jerry grabbed me and pulled me close again, and in a voice that weakened of desperation and fear, he asked me, "Can you see them?" I pulled my arm free and I ran out of that room. I walked back to the nursing station and one of the nurses asked what had happened because of all the screaming. Seeing as I really didn't feel like being seen as the office crazy, I played it off as being a result of my own mediocre at best blood drawing skill. And with the blood now drawn, I would finally be able to get some sleep and maybe just shake it all off. I made my way to the on-call room, which happens to be in one of the older parts of the hospital. I climbed into one of the beds and closed my eyes. All I could see with my eyes shut was the look in Jerry's eyes when he pulled me close and asked if I could see them. I resolved that the whole incident was a case of some funky weird vacuum trick in the tubing and a senile, sick old man. The only trouble is, since then, the shadows I've seen in dark rooms seem darker, the lights unable to pierce them. The noises from the old pipes have shifted to random tings and pings to rhythmic tappings. I'm not really sure what to make of it. In the past few days, the shadows have gotten darker and the tapping louder, and now I can't shake the feeling that I too am being watched.